Maybe you've seen this video by now of a Lululemon in Atlanta. Two people walking in quite casually and stealing as much as they possibly can hold. Well, the two women who worked at the store told them, "March out of here," and then went and followed them a little bit outside of the store to try to take a picture of their license plate. Now, in a sane world, these two women would be promoted. They'd get a bonus for caring so much about the company that they would take any effort at all to try to stop a shoplifter. But they didn't get a promotion. They got fired. And the CEO justified it later, saying, quote, "It's only merchandise." And I get it, of course, they don't want the liability of people employees getting in fights with people. I get that, right? But we're at a point now where it's not only merchandise. This is whether or not we can handle living in a civilized society, or if we even want to anymore. It's now about much more than just merchandise. We used to live in a high trust society, if anything, the highest trust society. And now we live in a low trust society. And that leads to the end of society. That is social breakdown, I'm certain of it. It's one thing to have low trust of our institutions, the FBI, the CIA, the CDC, higher education, the government in general, right? That's maybe even good to have low trust of our institutions. It's very bad to have low trust of each other. We have to turn this around now. There's a Pew survey. The question was, most people in society are trustworthy, yes or no? Most people in society are trustworthy, agree or disagree. In America, we used to be 77% said yes, most people are trustworthy. Now we're down to 58%, so we're dropping. Now we have this graph here, this image here of different countries answering that same question. And you see the countries that have low trust. Peru, 28% say yes, most people are trustworthy. Chile, 29%. Kuwait, 27%. Kenya, 25%. Uganda, 29%. Do you notice anything about the low trust countries? They are, as I believe Donald J. Trump would put it, blank hole countries. I don't want to be one of those. A high trust society is much better to live in. A high trust society, for example, has farm stands on the side of the road where they leave the vegetables there, and they have a little Folgers coffee tin, and a little sign that says, "Make your own change." That's the town I grew up in. My dad always commented on how pleasant it was to live in a culture that was trustworthy enough where you could make your own change. A low trust society has all the merchandise behind lock and key. Have you ever seen the Walgreens they have now in San Francisco? It's like, you know, when you go to the grocery store and they have the freezer section, and they have like the glass doors you gotta open up? It's like that, except locked, and every single item is like that. And now they have new Walgreens in San Francisco where there's no aisles at all. You just go up, there's a kiosk, you order what you want in the kiosk, and someone brings it up to you to check out. That is a low trust society. That is a late stage empire. That is a failing society. But it's not just buying things, it's just living. It's living. Do you lock your door at night where you live? Do you lock it during the day? Can you leave your garage door open? Could your kids leave their bicycle in the front yard? Can you walk down the street without cortisol flowing through your body? More and more people can't. Oakland had a town meeting. 500 people showed up, freaking out about the crime there, yelling at the city representatives that were up on stage. A 60-year-old woman went up and said, "2 kids beat the blank out of me in front of my house last Monday night. Down on the pavement, punching me, kicking me, dragging me through the street. It's happening everywhere," she said. Another San Francisco resident said, "We don't feel safe. I want to go out of my house. I don't feel safe anymore." People are starting to have enough, but not enough people. And I fear it's going to get a lot worse before enough people stand up and say, "No more." Before enough people stand up and say, "You know what? It's not only merchandise anymore." Let me give an example. Jen Angel. Jen Angel was an anti-police anarchist in Oakland. Like straight up, if you talk to her, you're like, "Hi, I'm an anarchist activist." And she owned a bakery as well. She was leaving a bank parking lot, and 2 robbers got in front of her car, blocked her car, broke her window, stole her purse out of her car. That's a thing in cities now. They just bust through your window and steal your purse. Okay? You're not even safe in your car. So she got out and ran after them. Now, these 2 robbers did not know that she believed in restorative justice. So she just wanted to talk to him or something. So she ran after them, and her clothes got stuck in their getaway car. Right? They slammed the door, and like her jacket or whatever got caught in it. And they drove away, and they dragged her 50 feet on the street. And she died of brain injuries 3 days later. She was 48. And her family says that she would not have wanted to see her murderers punished or prosecuted with a crime because she didn't believe in that. Okay. A couple days later, they held a vigil for Jen Angel in Oakland. And a woman who was a fan of her activism work decided to go to the vigil. And it was just by her house, just a couple minutes away. So she started to walk. On her way, she was attacked by 2 girls, 13 years old. They pushed her to the ground, stomped on her face on the curb, stole her bag and her cell phone, and then ran into a getaway car that was on the way to the vigil for the anti-crime anarchist activist who was also murdered. Or I should say was murdered. This woman was curb stomped, not murdered though. But if only we were nicer to these people. If only we had better restorative justice programs for these 13-year-old girls. This isn't about right and wrong or bad for business anymore, right? I'm not talking about the economic consequences of letting shoplifters steal things. Although if San Francisco sees that, all the stores in downtown San Francisco are gone, right? I'm not talking about the economic consequences. Those are obvious. This is about whether or not we want a civilized society. Another thing to keep in mind, and we'll expand on this in more detail another day, but I just want to throw it your way before we get to some amazing guests today. So excited for our guests. The great Os Guinness coined this term, the Golden Triangle. The Golden Triangle. So we all want freedom, right? We think we do. But what we don't realize is freedom requires virtue. And all of our founding fathers knew this. George Mason, 1783, said, happiness and prosperity are now within our reach, but to attain and preserve them must depend upon our own wisdom and virtue. So we want freedom, but freedom requires virtue. Okay, great. How do we get virtue? Well, virtue requires faith. And faith requires freedom. And around the triangle you go. Right? You can't have faith without freedom. You can't have freedom without virtue. You can't have virtue without faith, and it goes around like that. The government can't force you to be virtuous. They can punish vice, but they can't force virtue. The teaching of faith and virtue is done in the home. But we don't have homes. We don't have families anymore. George Washington, in his inaugural address, said the propitious means favorable. The favorable smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right, which heaven itself has ordained. That's the faith part. But we've disregarded the eternal rules of order and right in our nation. What did we think was going to happen? So it's not just merchandise. Can we live in a civilized society? That's the question. Hey, I'm Mike Slater. Thanks so much for watching that clip. If you want to see more truth like that, please subscribe to the First YouTube page. Just hit subscribe below.